I am a Latino, not an object or an alien. Strengthened by the pride of La Raza and the bonds of Chicanos y Chicanas alike. Yet, we fight for what seems like a losing battle. Juntos somos poderoso. But the Anglos keep us divided. They erase and discourage the knowledge of our history, gathering us like cattle or lambs for slaughter, poniéndonos en la cárcel, diciendo que este país no es nuestro país, that this is Anglo country, that the only word spoken is English. That is not our only words. We are not tourists and we are not criminals. No somos tacos, burritos y tortillas. Somos Aztecas, Mexicanos, Latinos, Chicanos, Maya. I hear the anguish of my people going back to a time that they fought to get out of. These radicals that you will call are the Chicanos that found and understood their history. East LA, Denver, Edcouch-Elsa are but a few who fought for our voices and history to be heard. Our blood helped create the red and the United States flag. You say America, but America includes Mexico. America includes Cuba, Venezuela, Panama, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. Latinos and Latinas help build the foundation. We continue to help it grow. You will no longer hide behind your shame, because when you say American history, Chicanos were there. Jorge Varagut, the Spaniard who fought the naval battles in the Revolution, or Bernardo de Galvez, who helped supply the Anglos to win their war, to win their freedom. Lola Sanchez, who was a Confederate spy. Loretta Janetta Velasquez, who was a Confederate soldier. So many more helped fight in your revolt from your origins and your civil war. Yet for helping the Anglos, we faced attack on both fronts. We are proud Chicanos y Chicanas. We will not let you erase us. We will not let you discourage. We will not let you brainwash us. Chicano power! We will shout and you will listen. You fear us, so you brainwash us. To fund the education system to keep your power. We know that you have none. I am a Chicano. I am strengthened by the bonds of my people and those who align with us. Together, we will win. Welcome everybody to another episode of Stay Real Podcast. I'm your host GD, and today I have wonderful guest speakers today that are heroes in the Chicano community. I would like to present Carlos Montes and Victoria Castro. Thank you so much, guys, for coming along and joining the ride. I know I've spoken to you a couple times in regards to what this podcast is about. I know I pretty much do reviews of movies, TV shows, and books, which is why you see here on the shared screen the movie. It's the scene that we left off on from the first part of the podcast. And I previously had Carlos Gallego on that first podcast review when we did the first half. Did not realize how far along we did not really get. If that makes sense. But I did want to talk to you a little bit, get your input as well. He thought it would be a great idea to also speak to such pronoun names in the Chicano community and these walkouts back in 1968. So thank you both so much for taking the time out of your day and joining us. Carlos, I would like to first introduce is you were originally and still are part or I don't know if you still are a part of it, but were originally part of the Brown Berets, correct?
Yes, one of the original founders with several of us, and I know Vickie was around the beginning with the young Chicanos. But I'm still. I was elected to be an elder of La Mesa Brown Berets a couple of years ago. So e- even though I wasn't affiliated with different chapters, I reaffiliated with La Mesa Brown Berets. And I'm still active here in LA with Centro CSO, fighting for education, against police abuse, and for immigrant rights.
That's great. That's great. And Victoria Castro, I know that you had started in the, you were in college during the time that these walkouts started, and then later ended up becoming part of the LA school board. What was that like?
That's true. I was one of the original members of first it was Young Citizens for Community Action, then it became Young Chicanos for Community Action, then later it became the Brown Berets. And so probably when you think of the walkouts and the movie and everything, which is a little bit of Hollywood, uh, what sometimes gets lost is that the walkouts were like 2 years in the planning.
Right.
So it just didn't spontaneously. People had roles that people organized. People were out there gathering information. So I was probably most active up until the walkouts. And then after the walkouts, I returned to Cal State as a full-time student and go into the UMass Mecha. And then I become a teacher and joined the Association of Mexican American Educators and still with AME, but I did serve 2 terms on the Board of Education for Los Angeles.
That's amazing.
Retired, retired, retired.
But you all still are a part of the community, right? You all still showcase, Chicano pride and Chicano power, and that is such a huge term right now. It's Chicano power, and that's so great.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. We did the 50-year anniversary of the Chicano moratorium, and there were thousands of new young people, high school, college, chanting Chicano power down Witter Boulevard. And we're going to do it again this year. It'll be the 55th anniversary of the Chicano moratorium.
oh wow,
So Chicano power is back. It never left.
Yeah,
never
yeah,
left, never left. You
yeah.
know, what's interesting though, so kind of putting in what's going on today and to a time where these walkouts took place. So for those of my people that are watching this today and have no idea when this took place, so back in 1968, this was the high peak and pinnacle of the Vietnam War, as well as in the East Coast, you had everything going on with those civil rights movements. You had MLK, you got Malcolm X, and then now we have on the Southwest part of time, you had such great movements, such as you had Cesar Chavez, and then of course. When the walkouts happened in 1968, I do believe, if I really did my research correctly, this was the first and the start of walkouts, because then shortly thereafter in November you had Edcouch-Elsa in Texas. Those students did their walkouts, and then in 1969 Denver did their walkouts, which Corky Gonzalez starts talking about when he does a interview or a speech at UCLA in 1969. And it's great. It's crazy on how much these walkouts represented something. It was for equal education. It was for better education. It's for Chicano rights. It was for the fact that we should be allowed to speak Spanish, and we should continue doing these, being part of our culture. And I feel like, I don't think, I know that in East LA that's still very prominent, but I don't think it's the same everywhere else. I don't know if you've noticed any of the other cities in the Southwest, if you've noticed any, that empowerment.
I don't know if it's as deep as it is in the Los Angeles area, but what I find interesting is whether it's school related or community related, kids use it as a mechanism. When something's going wrong in their school, if there's an issue, it's like on the top of the list. they organize for a walkout. So it's a tool that was invented on the east side for many parts of the Southwest, different times.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's a tactic that is used every 8 or 9, 10 years, right? We had walkouts in February here in LA. And I will say, though, 68, I think, was the first major uprising of Chicanos because we already had the farm workers on strike, the
Right.
boycott,
Right,
right?
right, right.
But the walkouts, urban uprising, and LA is, the
Mhm.
biggest concentration of raza in the US. So it makes sense that it happened in LA, but then it happened all over the Southwest.
And for the youth of today, when I do have the opportunity to speak to them, I like to share with them that we didn't have social media, we didn't have cell phones.
Uh-huh.
We had telephone trees. You dial one person, and then you
Yes.
dial another, and then they dial another, and that was truly the mechanism that brought emergency meetings together, coordinated some of our efforts, and there was there were, no cell phones, no mass media, computers.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
Barbary, yeah,
so
we had one
and so
car.
what it took was one-on-one pitching your cause. You had to, convince the other person that this is what we need to do versus, hey, everybody, let's do this. No, and I think that was for me. I was very fortunate to have gone through an organization training, and Cesar Chavez was one of the speakers, and that was his message. It's always personal. Every time you're with somebody, whatever you're working with, it's one on one. It's one on one, and that was really what I embraced and saw a lot of us take on that role.
Perfect.
You're right. The Barbary, we had one car, right? And we would get in the car and we would drive from East LA to Bow Heights. We would meet with people, young people, high school
Mhm.
students, gang members. Then we drive to El Sereno, have another meeting. Then we drive to Lincoln Heights. Then we
Exactly.
come back around, and back around. So yeah, you're right. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, no, and I laugh because I was the only one with a car during YCCA, and so I had a route. You pick up first David off of then Brooklyn, then you went down Soto to pick up Montezuma, and then into El Sereno for Paula. So I even had a route to so that we could get somewhere. So
Which
yeah,
we'll definitely be seeing in this in some of these scenes where it's like you do pick up Paula, you would. I love how the movie makes you kind of like an influence of like, can't you just skip work? Can't you just skip work? Like, this is important. And I love that, and it kind of reminds me of my family at one point in time where I was finally switching from security at a hospital to working at a insurance working in insurance. And I remember it was Christmas time, and my boss wanted me to work Christmas Eve night, and my family's like, to call out, just call out. Like, what are they gonna do? Just, are they gonna let you go? Like, you're already leaving. And I'm like, I guess. And it's just funny how so much, like, sometimes it's like, wow, it's a little bit of a bad influence.
Funny.
yeah.
But I wanted to get a little bit into some of this. So there's about 4 scenes I want to get into in this movie that I want to discuss, and then of course bring it into today's society. And the first one is where um, it's right after the taking it up to the school board, and so where Sal Castro
I
and
prefer it in.
everyone's trying
Listen,
to get
give me
the
more of these surveys. I'm gonna have to pass them out. So
handing out
bring
the
them to me for the
surveys.
next.
What I like about the scene is how
The meeting
everyone's
will now come to
very
order.
excited to see, like, hey, let's
Excuse me,
go
Madam
ahead
Chair.
and
First thing on
there's
the
gonna be
agenda is,
change.
of course, the funding west side.
But
The
then
approximately 2.5.
you start to see it kind of dwindle a little bit.
Wait, yeah.
take it up next week. I say we call it a day.
There we go. Julia Nava, played by Edward.
And if I may, Julian, you never take
For
just
anyone
1
that's seen
minute.
Stand and Deliver, you know that this game.
Earlier today, I passed out a report. It's a survey taken by a group of students from our East LA schools. There's some very interesting ideas on how to improve the studies for Mexican American students. May we go through it?
I think we could all use a little more time to review the document. What do you think, Dr. Nava?
But I'd like to set a timetable.
Put the timetable on the agenda for our next meeting. This session is now adjourned.
So they went ahead and decided everything that was all these surveys that all these students had put together to try to make some sort of change to the school. And it was everything from, I know like in Lincoln, they had the bathrooms that were closed and locked during lunches and before and after school. There was the whole using custodial work as punishment. There was the whole standing in front of the class for speaking Spanish and getting hit. There was so much that was being done and that needed to be changed. The whole issue of teachers that were being very discriminatory against Chicano students that needed to be let go or moved or something to where we can move forward as Chicanos, and they just kind of tossed it aside. Like it wasn't. I know this is all movie. I know this movie, but let
me give a little backup of what really happened. We came up with a survey. And we duplicated the old mimeograph machines. And there were teams that went to the high schools. And at that time, there were team posts. And they had questions like, is there corporal punishment? Are you punished for speaking Spanish? Are you ever counseled to go to college? So we gathered over 3,000 surveys. Then we divided them up by school. And then a team would go meet with that principal and nothing changed. And then we would go meet with the other school and nothing changed. Then we met with the region superintendent and nothing changed. It wasn't until Sal Castro comes to a meeting of then YCCA and says, if it doesn't hit the press, nothing's going to happen. In that interim time, we all worked on getting Dr. Nava elected. There was not a Chicano on the board prior to Nava. So he became the person after doing the dutiful way up the ladder type thing that, and I'm going to just reflect now as a board member, Carlos, is that I think we had a lot of anger after Nava, after getting him elected, and then didn't see him change anything. And then once I'm a board member, I realized it takes 4 votes.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't come until years later as to this is why Nava couldn't push it. If you didn't have 4 colleagues on the mission with you, nothing moved.
No, I see what you're saying. You're right. And one of my first political activity was going to the Casa del Mexicano and listening to Julian Nava and Sal Castro and Pat Sanchez talk about the election. So they got me involved in getting the vote out.
Right.
I was a young student at Eli, and you know what? I was a TPO director in Lincoln Heights.
Oh, okay.
That's how I met Eliezer Risco and Father Luz. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Okay.
But yeah, I was like looking at these guys. What do they want? These old guys want to get elected? Okay, that sounds like a good idea, But you're right. You need to vote because nowadays we lobby Hilda Solis for the board of board of supervisors on police issues, on charter issues, and she does say I got to get a second to the motion, then I got to get a vote. But
yeah.
But you're right. We were young, impatient, angry. Like did we ever call Julian Nava vendido or?
Yes.
Oh man.
Because we expected him to carry we worked to get him elected, and now you're elected and nothing's moving on here. And there's still things to improve in the schools, but We did do away with some things, corporal punishment, and you don't get punished or have your mouth washed for speaking Spanish. College advisors, Latino teachers and administrators. It's still a very difficult district to maneuver, though.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
we did win things, right?
Mhm.
We did win bilingual education, etc. Before I forget though, in the other cities, there's still the struggle for ethnic studies, and
Yeah,
it's still going on today. For real legitimate ethnic
yeah,
studies.
and it's being wiped out.
Yeah, it's being
I
yeah.
definitely
Go
I
ahead.
can attest I could definitely attest to that because I know back when I went to high school there was no Chicano studies. There was no knowing history. And it's interesting because I've had multiple conversations these past couple weeks with a bunch of fellow Chicanos and family and friends that I've known for that have been part of my life for so long, and how I have there's one person in particular who's like an uncle to me. He teaches Chicano studies in El Paso, and he told me that the students there are bored. They have no they don't care about what happened in history and what Chicanos and Latinos and all Latin countries in the world, how those people who helped in America. And I'm like, dude, I did not have that luxury and that opportunity to learn that in high school. I did not get the chance to know that we were that there was Mexicans and Spaniards that fought during the American Revolution, that there was Mexicans that fought during the Civil War, that a lot of our blood literally makes the red in the red, white, and blue of American flag. I would go, how is it that they can turn around? And that's the thing. History is written by only those who win, and
Hmm.
that was something I found out really very hard in a very hard way. And this movie was what inspired me to learn more, to understand more, and to push forward more. And I'm hoping that this podcast helps those people that are, have no idea about their history and learns a little bit more about what Chicanos did to help establish the foundation of where we're at now. And I think everyone that was part of these walkouts helped solidify that.
And the struggle now is with our current president. These things are starting to be wiped out. I have a friend that is a professor at Cal State LA Chicano Studies, and they're trying to figure how to either dissolve half of the curriculum, absorb it under another name. The school district has been threatened to erase it. How we get through this hurdle is another battle. And the sad part is you can go to the main four high schools that I recall the walkout, the Roosevelt, Garfield, Lincoln, and Belmont, and there are still kids that have never heard about the walkouts. So it's always an uphill battle for us.
No,
And
you're right. I had coffee earlier with a young woman. They wanted to know about some history, and you're right. There's so many battles that we're involved in, so many struggles, our history. That's why it's an ongoing struggle to really protect and expand ethnic studies right now. There's a whole
yes,
big campaign in California. There's a lobby that's trying to water it down.
Mhm, mhm.
there. I just read that just a couple days ago that our president decides that he wants to change the Smithsonian and his Natural History Museum to avoid the issues
Exactly.
and the bad, essentially, to make America look like it was this God sent country. And like nothing ever happened. No taking down the Native Americans. There's no the bloodshed. The 20% of the fallen soldiers that were in Vietnam during this time, during this movie, during these walkouts, 20% of the fallen soldiers were Chicanos. And majority of them were pushed up to the front lines because to them we were expendable, and we are not.
2 years ago, there was an outreach from the Smithsonian, and they called together quite a few what they call women of the walkouts, because we didn't get indicted. So who were behind those 13? And there was going to be we were establishing an exhibit at the Smithsonian for women of the walkouts, and the Republican influence canceled it, and it's no longer on the agenda.
So they're still erasing our history. You know, you're right. I've been interviewed by the Library of Congress. I donated my property to the Smithsonian Institute. So what are they going to do? Throw it away? Give it back. Give it back. I don't know. Yeah, it's a constant struggle. You know, with Trump in office, he's attacking everyone, everybody. So I'm going to a protest later today downtown. You know, and I want to do a plug. There's an emergency Southwest Summit next weekend in East LA to fight against the deportations and the Trump attacks. It's going to be at the East LA Youth Club on McDonald, Vickie, right off of Chavez. Yeah.
All right, for all my listeners, there you go, guys. That's your chance. Let's take a stand. You know, together we are unstoppable.
And there's an uglier tone. We were trying to establish things that didn't exist. Now we're fighting for what we do have being wiped away, and canceled. That's a whole different agenda. So, you know, in fact, some of us struggled with what is ethnic study? Where do you begin? You know, is it when we, no longer part of Mexico? So all the curriculum that was developed and is still being developed, that's not the challenge. Well, it's not the challenge now. The challenge is maintaining what gains we have and not losing them. That's the frightening part.
You know, I think this next scene will give us the perfect answer on everything. I really like this scene here. Let's see if it.
Can't just sit around and wait for these pendejos. It's time to protest. Yeah.
Hey, I know about the back from Nah makes a mean Molotov cocktail.
The point is non-violence,
I know some guy now that makes a mean Molotov cocktail. That was supposed to be your character there, Carlos. That was played by Fidel Gomez.
Yeah, Fidel. Yeah. Well, forget it. He's the that's definitely Hollywood in there. I never said that, you know. And by the way,
you gotta love Hollywood.
Yeah, that in there. And by the way, I was skinny and had a beard and wore dark glasses. The only good thing I said, somebody who wore dark glasses at night. Yeah. But no, I never said that. You know, but I was one about let's take action, let's stop talking about it, let's move, let's do it, you know. And I'm still that way today, you know. But I'm more methodical, you know, like Vickie said, I'm more methodical. Let's organize and talk to people. Then we'll do it, you know.
Right. And so I do know. Did you guys? I know that Sal and Paula, because I got the chance to talk to Paula yesterday before doing this episode, and she unfortunately is was unable to join us, as you can see. But she did tell me that both her and Sal Castro were able to kind of be kind of like the liaisons for the movie, and you know, helping out and stuff. I don't you know, explaining what happened and trying to get everything as almost as accurate as possible. And so so I wanted to give her a quick shout out and thank her for giving her time to talk to me yesterday in regards to, you know, how everything happened.
And the producer Montezuma Esparza was a very key role in the walkout, and he called a lot of us for input sessions as he was developing, and some of us were like, "You're going to put me in that role?"
Yeah. It took a long time to get
Yeah.
this movie going, you know. But you're right.
Yeah.
I saw the script and I go, wait a minute, that didn't happen. This happened, you know. I had to show him photographs of Roosevelt and Lincoln taken a photograph taken by the police,
Yes.
you know, of us. You know, I have the one in front of Lincoln High School when it shows
Oh,
Moctezuma,
right.
Sal, me, Vickie, even me. Remember Mangas Coloradas?
Yes, mangoes. Yes, I remember.
Miguel. What was it? I mean, what's his last name? Lopez, I think. No, Vigil.
The
Yeah, we ran into Lincoln High School at 10 o'clock in the morning, yelling "Waka, Waka!" You know, and what?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then the picture in front of Lincoln High, everybody lined up, picketing, rallying, you know, with Freddie Descendez getting on top of
Oh,
the car.
yes.
Remember?
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, Freddie. He joined the Brown Berets. His nickname. Remember his nickname? Remember what his nickname was? Sabu. But anyway, yeah. Young
It,
people
it's
coming
it's it's
out protesting. That was historic, you know, young high school students.
it's interesting that you mentioned that because that was the next scene. I know that so in this movie, and because due to copyright reasons, I'm not trying to show everything. And this plus, this is more for my viewers to watch this movie rather than me showing them everything. You know, come on, guys, let's you know, it's on HBO Max. You can watch it. It's free. Um, but nonetheless, this part here becomes powerful. This is the first day of the walkouts. Now I know walkouts technically happened from March 3rd to the March 8th. It was about a week long ordeal, and of course they only show about 3 times in this movie. But this first one, you mentioned someone was standing on the car, and I love how they make Paula's character the one that stands on the car.
Yeah.
So they just started shouting out, "Walk out, walk out." Police already ready. Already ready. There's Milton.
Accelerated, huh? You know, a little note. We pushed on Moctezuma. Like, come on, you had to wear a blondie, you know, playing the lead role. So they dyed her hair brown, right? And I told them, put some brown on her skin. Remember, Vickie? Because we got all mad because she had a blondie playing the role, right? Remember? Did you get involved in that, Vickie? Brown bread,
But I recall the issue.
brown pride, brown power, you know. Oh,
No,
yeah.
that's so funny because it's funny because Paula was telling me that she got to speak to Alexa Penavega and the guy that ends up playing her father in the movie, Yancey, and she was telling me that like she got to like talk to them before, during, and after the movie and everything, and it's just Yancey Arias is his name, and I'm just like, oh well, that's sweet, and so. And I knew Alexa Penavega from a different movie. It was one of those Spy Kids movies, and that's what I knew her from. And it was interesting that I saw this movie. It was back in 2011 is when I first was introduced to this movie. So this has now already been 5 years that this movie's been out, and I was just like, oh, that's the girl from Spy Kids, and I'm like, okay then. But it's so interesting. What I wanted to know from the scene. So on the first time that you guys did the walkouts, the first day, how nervous were you guys at that point?
You know what? I wasn't nervous because we were doing something right. Back my first day, my first school was Lincoln, and my job was to occupy the principal. And so I was being interviewed for a position while my other walkout buddies went into the halls to begin. And then the principal has to excuse himself because the walkouts are happening, and then I leave. But it was in comparison to from when I go to Roosevelt, it's a completely different screen. The doors were open, people walked out, they were yelling. There were no police hitting anybody with batons. So by the time I get to Roosevelt, it's a completely different atmosphere. The administration decided to lock the gates. You ain't going nowhere. Kids are jumping the fence. They're being hit in the back of their legs with batons, not to jump and whatever. So it was a very frightening scene.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Garfield or Belmont, so.
No, you're right. Because we got the night before, Eleazar Risco said, "Okay, you and Mangas go to run into Lincoln and start yelling walkout." I said, "Okay." So we did it. The door was wide open, ran right into the administration building, started yelling. And then you're right. They came out and told, "What are you doing? Get out of here." I said, "Nah, man, this is we mean business. This is the walkouts, right?" And then a couple of teachers came out and said, "Is this it?" They go, "Yeah, this is it. Let's do it,"
Yeah.
And then we rallied in front of Lincoln High School, like I said earlier. You're right. When we got to Roosevelt a couple hours later, they had chained up all the gates, and that's when I was on the Mott Street side at the gate, and then the students threw a rope over us. We wrapped it around.
Yeah.
A rope that's used for gymnastics. And we started pulling on it, and I said, "No, this ain't gonna work, man." And they were pushing and pushing on the gate, and miraculously, the chain popped and broke open, and the student rushed out of the driveway into Mott Street side. We were out there, and I turned around, and click, click, there was a police photographer taking photos of it. So there's a photo of that. I didn't know he was a police photographer, but later on, a friend of mine got him out of the DA's office. It's always good to have secretary janitors be your friends because they got all these photos out. That's how I got those photos, Vickie. I don't know if I ever told you. They were in the DA's office as evidence, and they snuck them out. They liberated them and gave me photos. I go, "Damn, look at all these photos," And that is a scene there in the movie where the gate pops open,
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment. Yeah, that was, and that was the thing. And so I know you guys mentioned that this was 2 years in the making, 2 years of doing these, of leading up to this moment of these walkouts, and Sal Castro, in an earlier scene that everyone that's watching at home get to watch on your own time. But Sal Castro turns around and says, "You have to get organized. You can't just all of a sudden, just do the walkouts without." He goes, "Were there any cameras?
Right.
Were there any news crew?"
He actually said, "If it doesn't hit the press, it doesn't count."
If it doesn't hit the press, it doesn't count. It didn't happen. You know what happened at Wilson?
Right.
A bunch of kids got home early. That's all it is. And so if it wasn't for the fact that you had a news crew, the fact that we didn't have a press, that it doesn't happen. And that's the problem. But you can't always rely on the press either. And that's the problem. And we're going to get into that scene. So for those of you watching at home, I want to warn you right now, what we're going to show can be a little bit too much to watch, but it's very vital in understanding what happened. By the way, Carlos, was this the the car that you were talking about, the Volkswagen?
We had one like that, but it was a little newer. Joe Rasso had one. Joe Rasso, he was the older Brown Beret member. But no, we had like an old Ramfla. We'd get in 4-door.
the first time I met Joe Russell was in the hallways of Lincoln, the day of the walkout.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What scene are you gonna show, Daniel?
This is the scene you were talking about the gates.
Clear them out.
I need everybody to go back to your seats.
This is where you're
Stay
mentioning
seated. I need you to stay in
people
your
were
seats.
blocking
Please,
the
Sylvia, Angela, don't do this.
closing up the
Stop.
door.
I need you to stop. Stop. I need you to step back.
Roosevelt.
Door, yeah.
Open your books to page 49.
And they walk out, and then these are the kids right here.
Assembly. By the order of the state of California, you must return to your seats. Get back inside! You're making a big mistake.
Students are coming from everywhere.
Susan, make sure that these kids keep moving, okay? Don't let them stop. Don't let them stop. Keep them moving.
All right. Back inside.
And this was Garcia as well.
Excuse me.
The gate scene is Belvedere Junior High. They used to film. That's what.
So, what's your name? John Ortiz got mad that they said that he pulled the alarm. He said he didn't do it. What? You remember that, Vickie? Poor John Ortiz. He passed away. You know, he was my neighbor.
Yeah.
But there was, that was. It's interesting on the fact that we've, at this point in time, we've lost El Castro, we've lost Bobby Verdugo, and
John Ortiz.
But just because we lost them doesn't mean that their legacy doesn't live on.
That's
Let's
right.
keep on living that legacy.
Yeah, Freddie to send us on top of the car. Okay.
But this is the scene right here. You're telling us that the breaking the chain.
And that's actually filmed at Belvedere College.
Get it open! Come on, the gate! The gate! You have 2 minutes!
I don't know where they got that from.
That's Rosemary. That's Rosemary.
Pop goes that chain. Pop goes that chain.
Check it out. I was crazy enough to run into Roosevelt and go into the building, and then one of the tall, husky coaches came after me.
Oh shit!
Running after me, and I go, "Oh my god, I'm getting." And I don't know what it was, but I ran up that building right there in the corner of 6th and Mott. I ran up the 3 stories.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He finally left me behind. I go, let me get out of here, you know. But it's funny that none of us were actually arrested that day. It was that indictment later on, you know, during the summer.
There is some real footage in there of the actual police hitting. In the movie, there's actual real footage.
Yeah, no, there is. You know, one thing I remember that I never brought up, when we would go back at the end of the day to the Church of the Epiphany, the basement, to kind of, okay, what's going on? And then we got a call from Belmont. They want to walk out, take these flyers. So me and it was Gomez. What was Gomez's first name? He passed away. We got in my car. We drove to Belmont to drop off the flyer. We get there, and bam, they surround us and arrest us. It was a setup. They took us
Oh,
into the
wow.
LAPD headquarters. They questioned us. They started asking me questions like, "Who in the party? Are you in the party? Who in the party put you up to?" And I go, "What party? What are you talking
Yeah,
about?" And
because
then
that
they
was
let us go.
George Putnam was saying we were communists
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
every
Then
night on the
yeah,
news, Channel 5.
that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Yeah. But it's funny they let us go. It was the detective just questioning us, and Gomez told me don't say nothing. I was kind of naive. I was saying, "What are you talking about? What party? What do you, it's just us." Yeah. What was Gomez's first name? Remember him? He passed
Uh,
away early. He
yeah.
was one of the 13.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so back to you. Yeah, and good. Those
Yeah.
scenes bring back a lot of good memories, Vickie.
I remember. I remember when you guys appeared in court, and we were all in. Yeah, we filled the courtroom when they
Yeah,
brought you forward, and then the women were wearing berets. We were wearing brown berets, just
yeah.
in solidarity.
At the old criminal court building where the Sleepy Lagoon case was tried, Sirhan
Mhm.
Sirhan and Manson.
Yeah.
oh
We
wow.
were up. Yeah, we were held. Me and Ralph Ramirez were held in jail up there when we first got arrested. Because we said we're not turning ourselves in. Come and get us. Like I think a couple of people turned themselves in, right? Because we were in Port People's campaign during the summer, and
Okay.
Corky Gonzalez came up to us, "Hey, there's warrants out for your arrest." I go, "Oh
Yeah.
shit."
I just
Yeah,
know those telephones were going that night.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and so got picked up. So and so just got picked up. Mm-hmm.
So, but the scenes that we were mentioning, that this is supposed to be peaceful, a very peaceful protest where we're allowed to walk out, and the fact that they were just grabbing these students.
1 minute. Better back up. For real, ¡Viva la raza! ¡Viva la raza! ¡Chicano! Clear them out.
That's real footage. That's real footage. I think that's some of the real footage.
I kid you not. Every time I see this scene, it makes me tear up. It's And what was interesting is the fact that the footage never really got placed onto the news. This is where I go back to where I was stating earlier that you can't always trust on what the footage or what the news or the press says, because all this there was so much footage of this police brutality. And I know, and for those of you that are watching and are gonna sit there and say, "Oh, they should have," no. This is peaceful protest. They are allowed to walk out. They are allowed to stand up for what they believe in. And there was no reason to use such excessive force on a bunch of kids, teenagers.
Absolutely, high school students. Yeah, we were arrested for conspiring to disrupt the school system, conspiring to disrupt the peace, and the case was thrown out is that we had a right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of protest. So all the charges were dropped. We had like 6 felonies,
Mhm.
and all those charges were dropped.
And so we as Chicanos, we as the Latin community are allowed to stand up and word and express ourselves, and that's the thing. Now we have this ability to use technology to our advantage.
Exactly.
We have this power, and the problem is that we are now so divided. And I say this with everything that happened with the whole Latinos for Trump, because they had this mindset. There's two reasons why. You had the mindset of like, okay, he's gonna deport all these bad gang members, these bad influences, que sabe que tanto. But the other portion was, let's face it, there's that machismo for all the Chicano and Latino males that were like, we don't want a woman president, let alone one that's of color, one that is considered a black female president.
And don't forget the abortion issue, the
The abortion
Católicos.
issue.
Mhm.
You have the abortion issues. Very, it is a very, very taboo to even proceed in thinking of abortion. It's not about women's rights to the state and what they should do with their bodies. No, it's like, oh no, that's bad, it's sinful, and all this stuff. But if we as Chicanos come together, as Latin community comes together, we can stop a lot of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one thing though, the numbers show that overwhelmingly more than 70% of whites voted for Trump. Well, Trump won because of the big giant white vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was some Latinos and very small minority that voted for him, but a very small.
Very
It
small.
wasn't significant to put him over the top. It was the white vote that got him out. And now that he's in, early February, there was thousands of Chicano Latinos protesting downtown LA, spontaneous upsurge. February the 2nd, the 3rd, that was a Sunday, the Monday, the 3rd. And then
Mhm.
all the walkouts that happened the first week were spontaneous anger. And I was downtown with all the folks, everybody had flags, Mexican flags, Salvadorian flag, Guatemalan flag. I got me one flag that's Mexican and Guatemalan mixed together. And of course the Palestinian flag. I'm not one as an activist to take over freeways, but there were thousands of people. They're
Oh,
like, "Come
that.
on, Carlos, we got in the free. I got my car, I got a convertible. I put the top down. We all got on there with waving flags. I know, and I drove on the 101. We drove back to Ball Heights, Vickie, because we said let's take the crowd back to Ball Heights Rally and Mariachi Plaza. But then the highway patrol stopped us on 4th Street,
Uh-huh.
and and then another second week of walkouts, but the more organized ones because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
nonprofits got involved.
yeah,
So
yeah.
now it's like you were saying, Vickie, that it's got to be more well organized protest against the Trump attacks.
Mhm.
Women, blacks, Latinos, all working people are uniting and pushing back against the attack on unions. There's a protest
Everything.
downtown. I'm getting text that, where are you, Carlos? You got to get downtown. They said it's at 4 o'clock today.
Yeah.
And yeah, so back to you.
Mhm.
Well, I think in that regards, yes, there is a protest going on, and it's throughout the nation. That and yes, together, guys, there's so much that we could change, and honestly, we got to bring back our history. We can't allow our history to go without words, without any sort of context. Just because they were the winning ones does not mean that we ourselves should be allowed to be erased in history, because our blood laid the foundation of this nation. Our blood is the blood, the red in the red, white, and blue of the American flag, and we will continue pushing forward. But I know We got a lot of stuff going on today, and I promised I wasn't going to take a lot of your time. I want to thank you both so much for being part of this podcast and joining me today. And I hope that if I do another podcast episode, we go into either the walkouts or just speaking about other things that are going on. I hope you are both able to join us.
Thank you.
Good to be with you, Vickie.
Good seeing you guys. Nice meeting you.
It was nice meeting you, Victoria. It was nice meeting you, Carlos Montes. I appreciate you guys joining us today.
All right.
Stick around, my fellow Stay Real podcast members. I'm not done with you guys yet.
Okay, let's see.
Well, there you have it, guys. We had the amazing Vickie Castro and Carlos Montes here on this episode, and I could not be any more ecstatic that this happened, guys. It was such an honor, and I'm so thankful that they showed up and got the chance to speak with us and learn a little bit more about what happened in the East LA walkouts of 1968. But not only did they teach us a little bit of history, but they also brought in what's going on in modern day society. And that was the important part, guys, and how much of a struggle that even now we as a community are enduring. But we're not done here yet, guys, because we still have a bit more of the movie to go on. Continue where we left off with the police brutality. I mean, these are high schoolers, kids, teenagers that are trying to walk out to show the Board of Education that the schools are being discriminative against our culture. And I say our culture because that is still what is going on today. It took years for them to finally introduce Chicano studies into high schools and college. Okay? In Arizona, that ban was not lifted until 2013. Our history is still being snuffed out. And then when we finally bring our history to light, it's being erased again and thrown into the darkness. Where is the fairness in all that? Why should I have to go through the internet to try to figure out my history when I should have been taught this in my school? I have an uncle, and as I mentioned earlier, who teaches Chicano studies, but this is in high school already. By now, the education system did its job. It did its job by turning around and giving out the history of American history. The parts that are written by the winners in history. Did we forget the Oregon Trail? Did we forget the mass genocide of the indigenous people on this country? Did we forget the MLK March? Did we forget the protests of Malcolm X? Because we obviously turned a blind eye against these walkouts in 1968. This was 57 years ago, guys. 57! It seems like a long time ago. 50 years ago, that seems like a long time. That's old. No. When you think about how our history is being erased, that is not a long time. In fact, that is too current. And with everything going on now, they're still trying to erase it. The very high schools that these walkouts happen in, Roosevelt, Garfield, Wilson, Lincoln, Belmont, these high schools don't even know that these things happened, that this walkout even happened, that a huge, momentous change in our history happened. We're going to continue where we left off. And again, I apologize to those for what we're about to see and what we've been seeing, the difficulty it is, but it is a very, very important understanding that these are high schoolers, kids being thrown to the ground, being thrown to the fences, being beaten with the batons as if we were not human. Let's check it out. at these kids just running for their lives, being gathered and corralled like cattle for slaughter. When did we become cattle? When did protesting become such a inhumane thing to do? That is within our rights. When did peaceful protesting become such a huge... When did it become a huge violation of our laws and our rights? Where children are getting hit like this. I mean, look at that. They going full swing. Look at how they just waited for this guy to come over the fence and throw him down. Look at that. And here's the thing, guys. We have gone years with this police brutality. Just 5 years ago, we had the whole BLM movement, BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, all right? Because George Floyd. Police brutality. Police brutality was then in 1968. Police brutality is now in 2025. And even before these walkouts, discrimination, overuse of power. Now, we can go on and talk about the police system and how it fails us. These guys were here to protect and serve, but who are they protecting and who are they serving? Or is it just for those who they believe deserve it? We have our rights too. The right for protest. For those of you that like to think that, you guys know your rights, let's break down the Bill of Rights for us, all right? Let's bring down the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, okay? Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of protesting. Let's not forget freedom of speech. But let's take freedom of speech. The right to speak what is on our minds, as long as defamation is not an occurrence. So that means is I can do this video, talk about what I'm talking about right now. What I can't do is start making false allegations, giving you guys false information that might be defaming or harming an entity. Okay? Freedom of assembly means that I have the right to gather. Okay, what does that mean? A gathering, church, party, something that allows us to be together as a community. Okay? Within limits, within reasons. Freedom of the press. Freedom of the press, what does that mean? Freedom of the press means that these news outlets, these newspapers, these magazines can put whatever they want. Goes under their freedom of speech as well. Whether it's truthful or incorrect information, on the other hand, it is what it is. Because you're going to have news outlets that prefer one side of everything, and then you're going to have another news outlet that prefers the other side of everything. We'll be lucky if we find one that actually sticks right down the center and tells the whole story. Because it's not just one or two stories. There's three. There's the one side. There's the other side. So one perspective, the other perspective, and then right there in the middle is the truth. That's what we want. Now, freedom of protest. This allows us to protest against something that we feel is wrong, whether it be in our government, in our schools, in our society. We have that ability to stand up for what is right, but in a peaceful manner. When we take things to the next level by getting violent, burning stores, burning cars, overturning, causing a whole traffic jam, things that could really do harm to a person or community or a business in the sense of actual destruction, physical destruction. No. But like what we're doing now with these blackouts of the economy, where we are not shopping at Target, where we're not shopping at Amazon, Walmart, all these major corporations that decided to get rid of DEI. That's peaceful protests. Because we're reminding these corporations that we, the consumers, help them make their money. And if they feel like us minorities aren't good enough to work for them, they don't deserve our funds. That's not fair to us Chicanos, the Latino community, the African American community, the Asian community, the Native American community, the women, the bisexuals, the gays, the lesbians, all of them. All of them have every right to work and wherever they feel they deserve to work in or that they want to work in. Now, if they're not qualified, that's one thing. That's cool. I understand qualification comes into things. But that was the thing, though. That we were not allowed to not hire someone based off of their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, their gender, their race, their political views. These kids walked out because they hoped for a better future. One where we got to learn more about our history. And they took a beating. They got thrown down. They got met with hostility. They got thrown in jail. It wasn't the kids, though. It was the adults that helped organize it. They got jail time. Carlos Montes said it perfectly. He was one of the East LA 13s, one of the 13 people arrested for organizing the walkouts. Montes, Moctezuma, Castro, and the other 10 were charged with conspiracy to disrupt a school. Disruption of school, that is a misdemeanor, but a conspiracy makes it a felony. Worth about 66 years in prison. I said earlier that you can't always trust the press. You can't always trust the news outlet. And we're going to see why in here in a second. But I wanted to go into what Vickie had stated, that you're going to see some of the actual footage that happened during the walkouts that were playing during the news. Now, the problem is that when we saw earlier, we saw all these photographers taking photos of all these students that were getting hit. There was actual video footage of all these students getting hit. But what did they play on the news? They stated that this was a violent attack by the high schoolers. And they swore that they thought that they saw an end to it. These policemen really believe that the chief of police really believed that they put an end to these walkouts, that they put an end to these radical organizers. See right here.
Continued for a second consecutive day as 2 East LA schools boycotted classes. Unlike yesterday's peaceful demonstrations where all 5 area schools marched in solidarity, today's smaller protest was marred by student violence. Fortunately, a heavy police presence kept order, resulting in only a handful of arrests. commentator Earl Brown has some thoughts about the events of the last 2 days.
What is the Mexican-American community saying to us
now
with these random displays of juvenile rebellion? Are they just children acting out? Or is there a much more dangerous element entering the story?
Carlos Callejo had mentioned that they had sent in spies, that the police had sent in spies to infiltrate this organization, you know, the organizing of these Chicano students for these walkouts. I'm not going to show you who it was here because then it's going to ruin everything for you guys. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, well, keeping this a secret for you guys. But for those of you that have, then you know who it was. And, you know, don't say nothing. Not until these people watch it. But the problem was, guys, is the fact that these were just, and I'm gonna say this again, these were just kids. How would you feel, parents, if your child was trying to stand up for what they believed in, and they did it in a peaceful manner, and they were met with such brutality? Siblings. How would you feel if you saw your brother or sister, your siblings, beaten for standing up for a cause that they felt was right? These are kids that just want to know their history. How well do you guys know your history? How well do you know your family's history? Where do your parents come from? Your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Did they march? Were they part of these walkouts? Chicanos, were any of your family members part of these walkouts? African Americans, were your grandparents or your great-grandparents, were they part, and were they there when Martin Luther King spoke? Or Malcolm X protested? Did any of your families fight in any of these wars? Vietnam, World War II, Civil War. Where did they come from? What brought them here to where you're at now? I can tell you right now, when it comes to my parents, my mom born in El Paso, my dad, the one that raised me, born here in Vegas. We go a little further back, my grandmother on my mom's side, with two of her brothers born in Juarez, a little pueblo outside of Juarez, just on the outskirts. She had three older sisters who were born in Chihuahua, in Sierra Chihuahua, and then their youngest brother born in Texas, For those of you guys that don't know what Texas is, Texas. Then we go to her parents. My great-grandparents, my great-grandmother born in California, my great-grandfather born in Sierra, Chihuahua as well. We go to my great-grandmother's side, and her mom born in Aguascalientes, Mexico, as well as her parents. Now, the thing was that I've heard stories from my family where we had a hacienda there in Aguascalientes. And we were forced out during the revolution. We were forced out because Pancho Villa needed this. This is how we have a connection with Pancho Villa. This is what I heard. This is oral tradition, guys. So a lot of things tend to get lost in translations. But that's the thing. Oral tradition is the oldest tradition of storytelling. The natives did it. We do it now. Because apparently we're not going to learn our history through the books, because the books are written by winners. So my great-grandmother, her parents, and grandparents, they move up north. Go to California. My great-grandmother's born. Then my great-great-grandmother meets a man who works on the railroads, building the railroad system. A very rich man. Wasn't good enough. They want to go back to Mexico. That's where my great-great-grandmother decides that tells my great-grandmother, we're going to go back to Mexico because there we were also rich and we had a hacienda. We were wealthy. Came back to nothing. So what happens when you went to Sierra Chihuahua? From there, my great-grandmother meets my great-grandfather. And then they own ranch. At least this is what I hear from other aunts, that we had ranches. You know, my grandmother was 17. She started working here in the States, working in a factory. She went to community college to learn English studies. She went to beauty school. She went to community college for office work. Lives in El Paso for a short time, and my mom's born in 1976, I want to say. 1976, my mom's born. 19 years later, living here in Las Vegas, my mom is pregnant with me. That's my history. And it goes on from there. The later down the line, all the other new family members that come about, all the families that are around. But that's my history. What's yours? You know, I was talking to a good friend of mine. His name's Daniel, but, you know, for those of you, it's Bad Apple Designs. We were talking, and he tells me how he wished that he learned a little bit more about his culture. What it meant to be a Chicano. He wished he knew more about being a Chicano, and I told him, dude, I got you. Because I've been learning, and I've been studying. But I asked him, do you know where the term Chicano comes from? And for those of you that don't know, I'm going to tell you. Chicano was a derogatory word. A derogative word that was used against other Mexicans. Mexicans against other Mexicans. Or Mexican Americans. Because Mexicans believed that anyone that was Mexican American turned their backs on the motherland, on the mother country, on Mexico. That we weren't worthy to be called Mexicans. We weren't worthy to be called Mexican Americans. That we were less than them. That we were smaller than them. That we were chicos. And we took that word and we turned that word into a powerful statement of what it means to be a Chicano. And we use that word in terms that's Chicano power. Because there's a lot of pride to be a Chicano. There's a lot of pride to be a Latino. To be from a Latin descent. There's a lot of pride to be an African American. There's a lot of pride to be an Asian American. There's a lot of pride to be a Native American. But with these nowadays conspirators, and these are who I call radicals, who are turning around and saying, let's make America great again, is what they're trying to say is let's make America white again. Where there was no such thing as the Oregon Trail, where there was no such thing as the genocide of an entire civilization, that we didn't own slaves, that there was no movement for the Chicanos, that we're in the shadows of history. It's not what we are. It's not who we are. You're going to see right now. It's probably the most powerful moment in this entire movie. And I hope that this scene in this movie does to you what every time I see this scene, it's a movement. Check this out. These cops haven't heard the last of us. So we're walking out again. Watch these students come out. Brown berets at the ready. Whether this is Hollywood or this is an actual scene and moment does not matter. Because this moment right here is still very powerful. Let's go to watch. These cops with baton in hand ready. ready to put down and silence us, but we will not be silent. The signs say freedom from oppression. Viva la raza. Chicano power. But that's not the only thing that really matters here. Not only are these students trying to get their voices heard, but the most powerful part is right here. Where these parents come. These families come to protect their children from the oppression of the police to ensure that they do not harm them. That these parents understood that what their kids were fighting for was right.
Anything to say?
That's what it means to be a Chicano. And it wasn't just here, guys, as I mentioned earlier. In Edcouch-Elsa in Texas in 1968, November 1968, there were parents that were being harassed by the community because they heard that their children were going to walk out from the high schools. And those parents understood that what their kids were going to do was right, and so they stood by them. Same goes in 1969 in Denver, and all throughout the Southwest. What Sal Castro says right here, this probably sums up the whole thing.
Anything to say? It's a beautiful day to be a Chicano.
It is a beautiful day to be a Chicano. It's a beautiful day every day. These students that allow these police brutality to silence them, they showed them that Chicano power has more meaning behind it than anything. We should do the same. Every day should be a beautiful day to be a Chicano. Every day should be a beautiful day to be a Latino. To be an African American. To be whatever ethnicity you are. Should be a beautiful day for that. We get to live. This country was founded by immigrants. I should say established by immigrants. Because they wanted to make freedom available to all immigrants throughout the world. To find freedom here. And liberty. And true justice. I guess those were just words. Mentioned earlier that the police had sent in spies into making sure that they understood what was going to happen next, and what ends up happening is that 13 people gets arrested. You know, Sal Castro just wanted these kids to be able to graduate high school, to be able to give them the chance to go to college. And so what do these kids do when they found out that he got arrested? They found a way to protest by allowing all of them to go ahead and apply to colleges.
American.
This scene with Bobby Verdugo, I like a little. It holds a special place in my heart because right here.
I don't know. When I find out.
He says he doesn't know what he's gonna be, and you know what ends up being? Before he passed away, he became a social worker, and he was still a huge activist in the Chicano community, helping all of those younger Chicanos. Vickie Castro, as you know, as I said earlier, we stated earlier, she ended up working in the Board of Education, in the LA Board of Education. Carlos Callejo became an artist. Sal Castro, as you saw, got arrested, but these guys, they got their case appealed, as you heard from Carlos Montes, because freedom of protest was on their side. That First Amendment saved them. Although what the worst part is, what we don't see here, so at the end of this movie, is the fact that when South Castro got out of jail on bail, he was not allowed to work as an educator. So guess what? More protesting. Now, rather than walking out, we sit in. The parents and students decided to go ahead and sit in at the Board of Education to make sure that they understood that they're not going to let them keep Sal Castro from continuing to educate and inform these students, these kids, and helping them. What's very powerful of this scene right here that we're going to show you next, there's two things that are powerful. And the first part is, look at the sea of Chicanos asking and telling to release the East LA 13. But what I love here is the fact that you see the Black Panther organization there. Some of you might think, well, because they like protesting, that's the reason why they're there. But I like to think it's because of the fact that they understood that we ourselves were being discriminated against. And they were joining our cause. We have become divided for so long that we forget black and brown is a beautiful thing, and we together can fight against all. It's the best thing we can do. Together we are unstoppable. And I've been saying that a lot lately. Together we will win. It doesn't just mean blacks and browns, but Asians, especially the natives. We outnumber them, guys. And that's what they fear. That's why they want to silence us. But here's the thing. For those of you guys that understand what it means, for those of you that understand that we deserve just as much right and history as you guys do, that's why we ask you guys to protest with us. And there has been. So it's not all just white people. It's not all white people. There have been Caucasians and Americans that have been joining our fight and our causes for when we stand together. Those are the ones that we have to think. But what's not cool is the ones that sit there and think that they can speak on our behalfs, on what they think is racist or racism on our culture, that try to speak stating that we don't know and we don't understand. We understand just fine. What's racist is for you speaking on our behalfs. If I see a white man and a Filipino making tacos, hey, I support. Because you understand that tacos are good. Tacos are very good. As long as they're made right. I won't eat that Taco Bell. Sorry, but no. As the sad part is, I probably prefer Del Taco, but that's after a couple drinks. But that's besides the point. A person that wants to know culture. So let's just say, for example, let's go back to this white man, a Filipino man, deciding that they don't want to just make tacos. They're making a lot of Mexican food. They opened up a food truck. And they were trying to do their own Mexican fusion. I don't want some white person to turn around and say that this is racially insensitive. I don't find it racially insensitive. The food's good. The food's good. That's all that matters. If a white man decides that he wants to wear poncho and sombrero, go ahead. Fake mustache, go for it. Keep spouting out and supporting us. If we walked out together as Chicanos and we have a white man deciding that he wants to join in wearing that same shit, as long as you carry that Mexican flag right behind you, and you shout Chicano power with the rest of us, it's okay. We'll accept it. So for those of you that want to sit there and state that's racially insensitive, do not speak on our behalf. We're not dumb. We're not stupid. We're a lot smarter than you guys want to take us credit for or give us credit for. Just because our history is being erased doesn't mean anything. We'll eventually get our history back. And we'll put it for everyone to see. There's already a mural. You'll see at the end of this at the end of this video. Painted about the walkouts. Carlos Montes even said his brown beret's there in the Smithsonian. Don't change that Smithsonian, guys. Do not erase our history. Well, the second most powerful thing in this entire scene is once you see Sal Castro come out of that building.
Sal! Thank you!
Everyone. All these students showing him their admission slips, their admission forms, thanking them for pushing for their education. In the fall of 1969, Chicano student enrollments at UCLA increased from 40 to 112, or 1,200 students, 1,200 students of Chicanos at UCLA. From 40 to 1,200, that's 300 times the amount. And of course, it took 2 years for the UCLA 13's cases to be appealed and thrown out. How much of our history needs to be erased? You know, they say at the end of here, Chicano power. What does it mean to be a Chicano? What does it mean to you guys? I'd asked this question earlier. I said it earlier on one of my videos. I'm going to tell you what it means to me. Chicano means being part of a culture with something bigger than ourselves. Chicano is a way of life where we could gather together and have pride in what we do, no matter the work that we put in. We stood for something and we stand for something now. By standing for what we believe in and wanting ourselves to be heard. Our history does not deserve to be erased and thrown into the shadows and cast out. No one's history is allowed to be that way. Because the only other ethnicity that has their history completely shunned out other than us is the natives. But they still sing. They still dance. And they still go on. And their voices will carry out through their generations. Sal Castro wanted us to write our history and tell our history. Because our history is being written and told by those that don't know our history. I've had family fight in wars. And I will continue having family here in the United States. I said earlier, America is more than just United States. There's 2 continents that state America, North and South, and the amount of countries that make up those 2 continents. The majority of them are Latin. Majority of them speak Spanish. The other part speaks Portuguese. It is April 12th, 2025. It's 90 degrees outside. It's a beautiful day to be a Chicano. Stay real. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. Chicano power.